Welcome to Soul Stories, your home for heart-touching tales of love, hope, and second chances. If you believe in the power of kindness and the magic of unexpected connections, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing family. Now let's begin today's story. Seattle, January 2025, arrived with its signature drizzles. The city sparkled with lights from towering skyscrapers, but beneath Sarah Monroe's umbrella, the world was reduced to three tiny hands clinging tightly to her. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy, her 3-year-old triplets, walked along the rain-slicked sidewalk, their wide eyes marveling at the floating digital billboards on the street. Sarah smiled, though her heart felt unbearably heavy. This was a new beginning, but also a massive gamble. After 6 years living in a small town in Oregon, working at a local craft store to support her children, Sarah had decided to return to the city. Seattle wasn't just the place where she had once dreamed of becoming a graphic designer. It was also where she had once loved, once hurt, and once left everything behind. But now she was no longer the naive 24-year-old girl from 2019. She was a mother, and her children were the only reason she kept moving forward. Sarah had applied for a design position at a tech startup called Spark Vibe, a small company advertised as a space for creative freedom. What she didn't know was that just weeks earlier, Spark Vibe had been acquired by Blackwell Industries, the tech giant led by Ethan Blackwell, the man she once loved. To Sarah, Ethan was nothing more than a painful memory, locked away in the drawer of the past. She didn't read the news, didn't follow updates about billionaires, and had no idea she was about to walk straight into fate. Today was interview day. Sarah had no choice but to bring her kids along. She couldn't find a sitter. She knelt down and gave them strict instructions. Stay in the waiting room. No wandering, okay? Damien, the most sensitive of the three, nodded seriously, his big brown eyes brimming with curiosity. Daniel, quiet and fascinated by machines, clutched his handmade robot model. And Daisy, the frail one with pale blonde hair, held her mother's hand tightly and coughed softly. "I'll be back soon," Sarah reassured her, brushing her daughter's hair. The Spark Vibe building sat in the heart of Seattle, a modern glass high-rise with touchscreens embedded throughout the lobby. Sarah seated her children in the waiting area, where soft couches surrounded a large screen displaying an ad for artificial intelligence. She gave Damien a firm look. "You're the oldest. Watch over Daniel and Daisy, okay?" He nodded, though his eyes had already drifted to the far end of the lobby, where a glass door slid open to reveal a brightly lit hallway filled with glowing tech. The interview went smoothly. The recruiter, a young woman named Mia, seemed genuinely impressed by Sarah's portfolio. "We need creative minds like yours," Mia said with a smile. Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she really could start over. But as she stepped out of the interview room, her heart nearly stopped. The waiting area was empty. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy were gone. "Kids?" Sarah called out, her voice trembling. She dashed across the lobby, scanning every corner, but only saw men in suits passing by, uninterested. She rushed to the front desk, nearly shouting, "My kids! 3 of them! Where are they?" The receptionist, a young woman, hesitantly checked the security footage. "I saw a little boy walk down the east corridor. Maybe he's yours?" Sarah didn't wait another second. She ran in that direction, sneakers pounding against the marble floor. The east corridor led to the executive office area, where glass doors bore the logo of Blackwell Industries. She didn't notice the name. She didn't connect the dots. All she cared about was finding her children. Meanwhile, Damien, his curiosity unstoppable, had led Daniel and Daisy toward a soft green light glowing behind a glass door. "Look, it's like in a sci-fi movie," he whispered, pointing at a large touchscreen display showing a 3D model of some futuristic device. Daniel, usually quiet, was captivated, and Daisy, though timid, held her brother's hand and followed. The glass doors slid open as they approached, revealing a large, luxurious office with an ebony desk and windows offering a sweeping view of Seattle. At the far end of the room sat Ethan Blackwell, brows furrowed as he read a report on his screen. 35 now, he looked just as sharp as he had 6 years ago, with a few more lines at the corners of his eyes. His tailored gray suit fit perfectly, his brown hair was neatly styled, and his piercing blue eyes, the very ones that once made Sarah's heart flutter, were now laser-focused on work. He didn't hear the soft footsteps behind him until a small robot model clattered to the floor. Ethan looked up, ready to speak, then froze. In front of him stood a 5-year-old boy with messy brown hair, bright blue eyes that mirrored his own childhood, and a sheepish smile. "Sorry, I just wanted to see that screen," Damien said, pointing at the device on the desk. Daniel stood behind him, clutching the robot, while Daisy clung to her brother, coughing quietly. Ethan blinked, feeling as though time itself had stopped. Damien's face, no, all 3 children's faces, held eerie familiarity. He stood, taking a cautious step forward, voice soft but wary. "Who are you? Who brought you here?" Before Damien could respond, the door burst open. Sarah rushed in, breathless, hair in disarray. "Damien, Daniel, Daisy, I told you not to—" She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes locked onto Ethan. Time rewound. The man before her with those blue eyes and commanding presence was Ethan Blackwell, the man she had once loved, once thought would be her whole world, until he shattered her heart 6 years ago. Ethan was just as stunned. "Sarah?" His voice cracked, disbelief etched across his face. He had never expected to see her again, the woman who had vanished without a word, and now she stood before him with 3 children who looked unmistakably like him. Sarah quickly composed herself, though her heart pounded violently. She knelt, pulling her children close. "I'm sorry for the disturbance," she said stiffly, avoiding Ethan's gaze. "We're leaving now." She stood, took her children's hands and walked briskly toward the door. "Wait!" Ethan called out, but Sarah didn't look back. The glass door closed behind her, leaving him standing alone, reeling. Damien, Daniel, Daisy, the names echoed in his mind. And Sarah, the woman he had once loved, once lost. This couldn't be a coincidence. Ethan turned back to his desk and pressed a button on the phone. "Lena," he said to his assistant, voice cold but firm, "find everything you can on a woman named Sarah Monroe. Immediately." Meanwhile, Sarah guided her children out of the building, holding them close beneath the Seattle rain. She had no idea that the door she had locked tightly 6 years ago had just been opened again. The rain in Seattle continued to fall, tracing blurred streams down the windows of Ethan Blackwell's office. He stood there, one hand braced against his ebony desk, eyes fixed on the glass door where Sarah and the 3 children had just disappeared. The boy, Damien, the name Sarah had called him, was etched into his mind. Those deep blue eyes, the tousled brown hair, and that shy smile mirrored a photo Ethan had once seen in his mother's old album, a picture of himself at age 5. Not just Damien. The other 2, Daniel and Daisy, also carried features disturbingly familiar, like miniature versions of himself. Ethan wasn't a man easily shaken. 6 years at the helm of Blackwell Industries had taught him how to stay composed, no matter the surprise. But now that composure was cracking. Sarah Monroe. Her name rang in his mind, dragging up memories he had tried hard to bury. Her bright smile during her internship at Blackwell, the evenings they spent beneath Seattle's soft lights, and then her sudden disappearance 6 years ago, without a single word. He'd told himself she had chosen to leave, but now her reappearance with 3 children made everything spin out of control. He sat down, his hand absently brushing across the touchscreen on his desk. A thought struck, sharp, undeniable. Those children might be mine. The idea made his heart race and sent a strange chill through him. He didn't know anything about them. He didn't know anything about Sarah's life over the past 6 years, but his instincts screamed that this was no coincidence. The ring of his phone snapped him back to reality. Lena, his assistant, spoke in her crisp, professional tone. "Sir, I've looked into Sarah Monroe as you requested. She recently applied for the graphic design position at SparkVibe, our newly acquired subsidiary. Her file lists her as 30 years old, recently relocated from Oregon, and—" Lena hesitated. "She's the mother of 5-year-old triplets." Ethan's hand clenched, voice steady but tight. "What are their names?" "Damien, Daniel, and Daisy Monroe," Lena answered. "I can dig for more information, but it'll take some time." Do it, Ethan ordered, his tone cold but urgent. I want everything. Where she's living, her work history, her family situation, all of it. He ended the call and turned back to the window. 5 years old. Sarah had left 6 years ago. The timing matched too perfectly. Meanwhile, in a small apartment on the outskirts of Seattle, Sarah sat holding Daisy in her arms. The little girl still coughed softly, her face pale but her smile sweet. Damien and Daniel were on the floor, playing with the robot model Daniel had painstakingly assembled. Mom, Damien asked suddenly, his curious eyes fixed on her. Who was that man in the office? He looked at us really weird. Sarah froze, her hands tightening without realizing it. He's just someone who works there, she replied, her voice unsteady. You can't run off like that again. Do you hear me? You scared me. She leaned down and kissed Daisy's forehead, trying to hide the panic in her chest. Ethan Blackwell. She had thought she could forget him, but the moment she looked into those blue eyes, all the memories came flooding back like a tidal wave. His smile, his promises, and that cold, devastating message on Blackwell's internal app. We're not right for each other. Don't contact me again. She had read it hundreds of times until her tears blurred the screen. 6 years ago, Sarah was a hopeful intern who believed love could conquer anything. But that message, paired with a tabloid article announcing Ethan's engagement to the daughter of a powerful family, had shattered everything. She had fled Seattle carrying a secret, the children she refused to raise in the shadow of a man who clearly didn't want them. And now he was just steps away again. The way he looked at Damien had terrified her. Did he recognize him? Was he suspicious? Sarah stood and poured a glass of water, trying to calm her racing thoughts. He doesn't know, she told herself, and he won't. She had built a life for her children, and she wouldn't let the past ruin it. If she got the job at Spark Vibe, she'd keep her distance, work hard, and make sure Ethan Blackwell never entered her children's world. But Ethan wasn't the kind of man to let go. Later that evening, under the bright lights of his office, he received an email from Lena. The attached file included Sarah's application, her temporary Seattle address, and a photo, taken at a park in Oregon, of her with the 3 children. Ethan zoomed in on the image, studying the faces of Damien, Daniel, and Daisy. His chest tightened. Not just Damien. Daniel had his thick eyebrows, and Daisy, though frail, wore a smile eerily similar to his mother Eleanor's in the old family photos. He remembered the moment Sarah had burst into his office, hair a mess, eyes wide with fear, but fierce in her protection of the children. She had changed. She was no longer the innocent girl he once knew. She was stronger now, but more distant too. Sorry for the disturbance, she'd said, avoiding his eyes like looking at him physically hurt. Why did she leave 6 years ago? Why didn't she ever come back? And these children, who are they really? Ethan shut his laptop, stood, and stared out at the city swallowed in darkness. He didn't believe in coincidences. Sarah Monroe wasn't just a ghost from the past. She was the answer to questions he had never dared to ask. And he would find the truth, no matter how long it took. Sarah sat in the dimly lit apartment on the outskirts of Seattle, the soft glow of a desk lamp casting a warm hue on her face. Daisy was already asleep, her breathing gentle on the small bed, while Damien and Daniel whispered to each other about the robot model in the corner of the room. But Sarah's mind wasn't there. The unexpected encounter with Ethan Blackwell the day before, his stunned gaze when he looked at the children, had flung wide open the door to a past she had spent 6 years trying to seal shut. She closed her eyes and the memories came rushing back, clear as if it had happened only yesterday. Back in 2019, Sarah Monroe was 24, a dreamy and ambitious graphic design intern at Blackwell Industries. Seattle, with its rain-soaked streets and glittering skyline, felt like the perfect place to build a future. Blackwell Industries, a tech titan, was every graduate's dream workplace. But what truly made her heart race wasn't the innovative projects or sleek office spaces. It was Ethan Blackwell. At the time, Ethan was 29, not yet the cold CEO he had become. He was the head of product development, brilliant, sharp, but with a smile that seemed meant only for Sarah. They met during a team meeting when Sarah presented a UI design concept for a new app. "You have talent," Ethan said, his deep blue eyes locking with hers, and she felt her cheeks flush. From that moment, brief hallway chats turned into after-work coffees and then into weekend walks along Puget Sound, where Ethan shared dreams of making technology accessible to all, and Sarah talked about the sketches she'd drawn since she was a child. Their love blossomed quickly, intense yet discreet. Ethan, heir to the Blackwell empire, disliked attention. Sarah, a small-town girl, was unaccustomed to the glitz of high society. But when they were together, they were just Ethan and Sarah. No barriers, no expectations. One summer night, under the soft moonlight in Ethan's apartment, they crossed a line. Lying in his arms, Sarah felt as though the world had melted away. "I'll always be here, Sarah," Ethan had whispered, and she believed him. But weeks later, everything changed. Sarah discovered she was pregnant. Panic hit first, but underneath it was joy. The babies, she didn't yet know it was triplets, were a gift born of love. She decided to tell Ethan, even though she feared he might not be ready. She planned to meet him after work, rehearsing her words over and over in her head. But before she could speak to him, a notification popped up on her phone. From Blackwell Connect, the company's internal messaging app. It was from Ethan Blackwell's verified account, marked by the badge reserved for senior executives. The message was brief and clinical, the way he approved business reports. "Sarah, we're not right for each other. Don't contact me again." Sarah read it over and over, her heart stopping. The tone was unmistakably Ethan, blunt, decisive, like the way he handled meetings. But what shattered her was the finality. No explanation, no chance to speak. She tried calling, hands trembling. But the only number she had, his work line, returned a message. No longer in service. She messaged him through Blackwell Connect. "Ethan, I need to talk. Please." There was no reply. She even went to the office only to be told by security that Ethan was out of the country on business. Desperate, she left a handwritten note at the front desk. "Ethan, I need to see you. Sarah." She never knew that note was intercepted and quietly destroyed by Helen, the personal assistant of Eleanor Blackwell, Ethan's mother. Helen wasn't acting out of loyalty alone. Eleanor had promised her a promotion to upper management if she could take care of Sarah. To Eleanor, Sarah was a threat, a small-town intern with no pedigree, no prestige, utterly unfit for the future she envisioned for her son. Ethan was destined to inherit Blackwell Industries and marry into a powerful family to secure corporate alliances. "This girl will ruin everything," Eleanor had said behind closed doors. "Make sure she disappears, and Ethan must never find out." Sarah knew nothing of this scheme. All she knew was that her heart had shattered. 2 days after the message, an article spread online. Ethan Blackwell engaged to Sophia Langley, heiress of Langley Tech. A photo of Ethan smiling beside a glamorous blonde in a glittering evening gown struck like a final blow. Sitting alone in her apartment, tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks as her hand rested over her stomach. "It's just you and me now," she whispered, though she didn't yet know there were 3 lives growing inside her. She went back to Blackwell Industries one last time, praying to see Ethan, but security told her he wasn't scheduled to return. Standing beneath the relentless Seattle rain, Sarah felt invisible, small and helpless against the Blackwell empire. She decided to leave, not just because her heart was broken, but because she wanted to protect her children from a father who, it seemed, didn't want them. She moved to a small town in Oregon, took a job at a craft store, and raised Damien, Daniel, and Daisy with all the love she had. Every night, watching them sleep, she reminded herself she had made the right choice. But now, as the memories of Ethan came rushing back, she couldn't help but wonder, did I really know him at all? The Seattle rain had finally eased, leaving shimmering puddles on the streets. In Ethan Blackwell's expansive office, sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating his desk, where a child's drawing lay neatly placed. The picture, sent through Blackwell Industries' internal mail system, was a single sheet of A4 paper, drawn with clumsy but heartfelt crayon strokes. In the center were 4 stick figures holding hands, a long-haired woman, 3 small children, and a tall man with carefully colored blue eyes. Beneath it, the scribbled handwriting of a 5-year-old read, I think I know who my daddy is. For Mr. Ethan. Ethan stared at the drawing, his fingertip gently tracing the blue crayon. Damien, the curious, sensitive boy who had stumbled into his office 2 weeks ago, was now tugging at his heart in a way Ethan hadn't expected. He had reviewed the file Lena sent him over and over, Sarah's application, the photos of her children, and the timelines that aligned far too perfectly. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy, 5 years old, born just months after Sarah left Seattle. He didn't need a DNA test to suspect the truth, but he also couldn't act on impulse. U.S. law prohibited DNA testing of minors without legal parental consent, and Ethan, despite his influence, had no desire to cross ethical lines. More than anything, he wanted the truth to come from Sarah herself, not from some cold lab report. He picked up his phone and called Lena. Schedule a meeting with Sarah Monroe. Just the two of us. No one else. Tell her it's regarding her work at Spark Vibe. He paused, knowing Sarah wouldn't agree easily. She'd kept her distance since that unexpected encounter, and he could feel the invisible wall she had built. But Damien's drawing was a plea, a door opening, and Ethan couldn't ignore it. Meanwhile, Sarah sat in the small office at Spark Vibe, her eyes focused on her computer screen. She had just been officially hired as a graphic designer, a huge step after years of odd jobs in Oregon. But her joy was clouded by what she had discovered the previous week. Spark Vibe was now a subsidiary of Blackwell Industries. Ethan Blackwell, the man she once loved and ran from, was now indirectly her boss. Every day she came to work, she worried she might run into him. Thankfully, he occupied the top floor while she worked in the design wing far below. The phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. Mia, her manager, spoke in a calm voice. Sarah, Mr. Blackwell would like to meet with you. Just a quick conversation about your position. This afternoon, would that work? Sarah froze, her hand tightening around her pencil. She wanted to refuse, but that morning Damien had asked her, Mom, will Mr. Ethan come back? And that look in his eyes. She had to face Ethan if she wanted to protect her children. Okay, Sarah replied stiffly, but I have conditions. No press. No one else is to know about this meeting. Mia agreed and Sarah's stomach nodded. She had no idea Damien had sent the drawing. No idea her son's innocent gesture had pulled her into a conversation she wasn't ready to have. That afternoon, Sarah stepped into Ethan's office, her heart pounding. The room looked just as it had 2 weeks ago. An ebony desk, windows overlooking Seattle, and an atmosphere steeped in authority. Ethan rose to his feet, his tailored gray suit perfectly in place, his piercing blue eyes fixed on her with a mix of curiosity and restraint. Thank you for coming, Sarah, he said, his voice low. He gestured to the seat across from his desk, but Sarah remained standing, her hand clutching her bag strap tightly. I'm here about work, she said flatly. If this isn't important, I'll be leaving. She avoided his gaze, terrified that one look would unravel her. Ethan didn't respond right away. Instead, he picked up the drawing and placed it on the desk, turning it toward her. This was sent to me, he said, voice calm but pointed. Damien. He wrote that he thinks he knows who his father is. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. She rushed forward, snatching the paper, panic in her eyes. Damien doesn't know what he's doing, she said, her voice trembling. He's just a curious child. Don't read too much into it. She shoved the drawing into her bag as if hiding it could erase Ethan's suspicions. Sarah, Ethan said, stepping closer. His tone softened, but his resolve didn't waver. I'm not trying to cause trouble, but I need to know the truth. These children, they might be mine, right? He paused, locking eyes with her, waiting. Sarah turned away, taking a deep breath. She wanted to scream, to run, but she knew she couldn't. Her children were everything, and she would face anything to protect them. If you want to talk about my kids, she said coldly, there's nothing to discuss. They're mine, only mine. Ethan's jaw clenched, but he forced himself to remain calm. He had considered pushing for a DNA test, but the law and his conscience held him back. He didn't want to pressure Sarah. He wanted her to choose to tell him, even if it took time. Fine, he said finally. I respect that, but at least let me help. The children, they must need support, medical care, school, anything. I can provide financial assistance. Sarah laughed, bitter and sharp. Financial assistance? She scoffed, eyes flashing. You think money fixes everything? I've raised them for 6 years without anyone's help. I don't need yours, Ethan. She turned to leave, but he called out, Sarah, I'm not trying to fight. I just want to do what's right. If they are. He couldn't finish the sentence. If they're connected to me, I want to take responsibility. Sarah stopped, her hand on the door handle. She turned back, pain etched into her features. Responsibility? 6 years ago, you chose to walk away. Don't talk to me about responsibility now. She opened the door and walked out, leaving Ethan reeling. He stared at the desk, at the copy of Damien's drawing he had kept before giving Sarah the original. Her final words echoed in his mind. You chose to walk away, but he hadn't. Sarah had vanished without a trace. So why was she speaking as if he had betrayed her? Ethan sat down, rubbing his temples. Something wasn't right, and he was going to find out what it was. Back in her apartment, Sarah held Damien in her arms, the crumpled drawing resting on the table. You can't send anything to Mr. Ethan again, okay? She said gently but firmly. Damien nodded, his eyes full of regret. I just wanted him to like us, he whispered. Sarah kissed his forehead, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She didn't know how to protect her children from the past, but she knew one thing. She wouldn't let Ethan take them away. Even if deep down, her heart still trembled at the sound of his voice. March in Seattle brought cold winds, but rare sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow on the small park near Blackwell Industries. Ethan Blackwell stood by a wooden bench, holding a paper bag of chocolate chip cookies, his gaze following 3 children playing on the grass. Damien, with his messy brown hair, was chasing a soccer ball, laughing out loud. Daniel, quieter, sat on a bench nearby, carefully assembling a plastic robot model. And Daisy, the frailest of the 3, with pale blonde hair, sat next to Ethan, her tiny hands clutching a cloth doll, coughing softly in the breeze. It had been 2 weeks since the tense conversation in Ethan's office. Sarah, though reluctant, had agreed to let Ethan see the children, under strict conditions. He was to be introduced only as Mr. Ethan, a family friend from work, and all interactions had to be supervised. I'm doing this for them, not for you, she'd said, her voice cold but trembling. Ethan had nodded, accepting her boundaries. He understood now. Fatherhood wasn't a birthright. It had to be built, slowly, with patience and sincerity. Today marked his 3rd visit with the children. He had chosen the park instead of the office to help them feel more comfortable. Damien was the first to break the ice, pulling Ethan into a game of soccer. Mr. Ethan, you kick harder than Mom, Damien shouted, making Ethan laugh, his first genuine laugh in weeks. Daniel, though quiet, had started asking Ethan about technology, his eyes lighting up as Ethan explained how the touchscreen in his office worked. But it was Daisy, the most delicate of the 3, who stirred something deeper in Ethan. Are you cold, Daisy? Ethan asked gently, removing his tailored jacket and draping it over her shoulders. Daisy shook her head, but her faint smile worried him. Sarah had mentioned that Daisy was born prematurely and had always been weaker than her brothers. Every soft cough from her was a reminder of the responsibility he might have failed. Want me to tell you a story? Ethan asked, sitting beside her. Daisy nodded, her eyes bright. He improvised a tale about a little robot searching for his family, and Daisy giggled softly, leaning closer to him. In that moment, Ethan's heart warmed and ached. If they're mine, I've left them alone for far too long. A few feet away, Sarah pretended to scroll through work documents on her phone, but her eyes never strayed far from Ethan and the children. She had recently transferred to Blackwell Industries' main office, a move she initially resisted. But Mia, her manager, had convinced her it was a chance to work on larger projects. Sarah poured herself into her work, designing interfaces for a new app, and was surprised by how smoothly everything had gone. Her computer never lagged, approvals came quickly, and she'd even been assigned a part-time assistant. She didn't know Ethan had quietly ordered the IT team to ensure she had every tool she needed. He never interfered directly. He didn't want her to feel watched or controlled. He just wanted her to have time, for the kids and for herself. Watching Ethan with the children, Sarah's heart twisted. She hated how quickly the kids had taken to him. Damien no longer asked about Mr. Ethan with curiosity, but with excitement. Daniel, once reserved, now brought his robot creations to show off. And Daisy, her shy, cautious Daisy, had even given Ethan a paper flower, whispering, "For you, because you tell good stories." Sarah wanted to be angry at Ethan, to keep her wall up, but every small gesture, his patience with the children, the way he honored her boundaries, chipped away at her resolve. "Sarah," Ethan called gently as the children ran off to collect leaves. He approached slowly, keeping enough distance not to make her feel cornered. "Thank you for letting me be here. I know this isn't easy for you." He used you in the way he used to 6 years ago, and it made her heart skip before she caught herself. "Don't misunderstand," she said quickly, voice rigid. "I'm doing this for them. They need good people around, not for any other reason." She turned away, but Ethan didn't retreat. "I understand," he said, his voice calm. "But if there's anything the kids need, doctors, school support, or even just a fun day, please let me know. I won't force anything. I just want to be there." He looked at her not as a powerful CEO, but as a man learning how to care. Sarah didn't reply, only gave a small nod. She called the kids back, ending the visit earlier than planned. On the way home, Daisy held her mother's hand and whispered, "Mr. Ethan's nice, isn't he, Mommy?" Sarah gave a faint smile, brushing Daisy's hair. "He's trying, sweetheart." But inside, she couldn't deny what Ethan was doing, something she never believed he could 6 years ago, becoming part of their lives. That night, in their small apartment, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, staring at a photo taken in Oregon. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy grinning under the sun. She'd once believed she could be both mother and father all by herself. But the way Ethan looked at Daisy today, when he wrapped his coat around her, made her wonder, am I denying them something they deserve? She shook her head, forcing the thought away. Ethan might be kind now, but 6 years ago, he chose to leave. She couldn't let herself trust him again. In his office, Ethan placed Daisy's paper flower next to Damien's drawing. He didn't know how to tear down Sarah's wall, but he knew he couldn't walk away. Fatherhood, he realized, wasn't about blood. It was in the little moments, a story, a smile, a day at the park. And he would fight for every single one, whether or not Sarah let him in. April 2025. The air in Seattle was thick with moisture from the morning rain. Sarah stood in her small office at Blackwell Industries, eyes skimming the design on her screen, though her mind was elsewhere. 3 months had passed since she'd come face to face with Ethan again, and everything had changed, for her and for the children. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy had grown increasingly attached to Mr. Ethan, and no matter how much Sarah tried to keep her distance, she couldn't deny one thing. Ethan was trying, truly trying, to become a part of their lives. But every time Daisy beamed while recounting something Ethan had done, every question Damien asked about him, Sarah felt her fear deepen. She was afraid the past would repeat itself, that Ethan, or his family, would tear apart the fragile world she had built. That afternoon, as Sarah prepared to leave work and pick up the kids from daycare, a woman entered her office without knocking. She wore a deep sapphire silk dress, her silver hair neatly pinned back, and her eyes sharp enough to cut glass. Sarah stiffened immediately. She recognized her at once. Eleanor Blackwell, Ethan's mother, the formidable matriarch behind the Blackwell Empire. They had never met, but 6 years ago, Sarah had heard the whispers. Eleanor was powerful, uncompromising. "Ms. Monroe," Eleanor said slowly, her voice low and deliberate, as if delivering a sentence. She sat down across from Sarah without being invited, her gloved hands folded gracefully on the desk. Sarah clenched her fists, keeping her voice steady. "Mrs. Blackwell, if this is about my work, I can arrange a meeting with my manager." "Don't pretend," Eleanor interrupted sharply, her piercing gaze unwavering. "You know why I'm here, the children, and Ethan." She tilted her head slightly, as if appraising Sarah. "You don't belong in this world, Miss Monroe. I respect that you're a mother, but you don't understand the pressures of a family like ours. Reputation, responsibility, Ethan needs someone who fits that mold. Not a girl from a small town with 3 children. Her words sliced like a knife, resurrecting the pain from 6 years ago. Sarah rose to her feet, voice trembling but firm. You don't get to talk about my children. They are everything to me, and I don't need your approval or anyone else's. Eleanor offered a faint, dismissive smile. You misunderstand. I didn't come to argue. I came to offer a solution. Leave Seattle. I'll provide enough money for you and your children to live comfortably. But you must go and never come back. She pulled a check from her purse and slid it across the desk. The number written on it could have bought a house in nearly any city. Sarah stared at the check, then at Eleanor. Her blood boiled. You think I'd sell my children for money? She tore the check into pieces and let them fall to the floor like snowflakes. You can buy all of Seattle, Mrs. Blackwell, but not me. I will protect my children, even if it means standing against you or anyone else. Eleanor stood, her expression faltering for the first time before hardening again. You'll regret this, she said, and walked out, leaving Sarah breathless. When the door clicked shut, Sarah collapsed into her chair, tears slipping down her cheeks. The message from 6 years ago, the article about Ethan's engagement, and now this warning. It all came crashing back like a storm. She couldn't let her children grow up under the shadow of the Blackwell family. She had to leave, again. That night, Sarah began packing. In the small apartment, she folded the clothes of Damien, Daniel, and Daisy into suitcases, trying to hide her tears from them. We're going somewhere new, she told them when Damien asked, forcing a cheerful tone. There'll be prettier parks. But deep down, she knew. She wasn't just fleeing Eleanor. She was running from Ethan too, from the feelings he stirred inside her. Elsewhere, Ethan sat in his office, watching a security video Lena had forwarded him. He'd ordered surveillance after hearing Eleanor had visited Spark Vibe. The footage showed his mother entering Sarah's office and leaving with that same cold smile. His jaw clenched. Without a second thought, he drove to the Blackwell estate, where Eleanor sat in the parlor sipping tea, the chandelier light reflecting off her polished features. Mother, Ethan said, voice icy, restrained fury beneath every word. What did you say to Sarah? Eleanor calmly set down her teacup, unaffected. I did what was best for you, Ethan. That woman and those children will hold you back. You need someone like Sophia Langley, not a single mother with no status. Ethan stepped closer, fists clenched, his eyes blazing. You always have to control everything, don't you? 6 years ago, I thought Sarah left me. But now, I'm not so sure. She said I abandoned her. But that's not what happened. Did you do something? Did you drive her away, just like you're doing now? He waited, hoping for denial, but Eleanor remained silent. I don't need an answer now, Ethan said, voice quieter but unyielding. But hear me clearly. If you ever interfere with Sarah or my children again, I will resign from the family board. Blackwell Industries can go on without me, but I will not let you destroy my family again. Eleanor paled. It was the first time in years she had seen Ethan like this. Not as her obedient son, but as a man ready to walk away from it all. You don't understand, she said, voice trembling. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me? Ethan gave a bitter laugh. If those kids are mine, you stole 6 years from them. Don't make me choose, Mother, because you won't like my choice. He turned and walked away, leaving her gripping her teacup with white knuckles. Word of the confrontation reached Sarah quickly. Lena, who had witnessed part of the exchange through the glass doors, relayed the story to Mia. And Mia, out of kindness, told Sarah the next morning. Ethan defended you and the kids, Mia said gently. I've never seen him like that. Sarah didn't reply, but Mia's words echoed in her mind all day. That afternoon, she took the children to the park, where Ethan was waiting as usual. He sat on a bench, reading to Daisy, while Damien and Daniel played soccer nearby. As Sarah approached, Ethan stood, his eyes filled with worry. Sarah, I heard my mother came to see you. I'm sorry. I've made it clear she's not to interfere again. Sarah looked at him, and for the first time, she didn't see a powerful CEO or the man who had once broken her heart. She saw a father learning to love, A man who had stood up to his family for the sake of their children. Why? She asked softly. Why are you fighting for us? Ethan gave a sad smile, his eyes drifting to Daisy's laughter. Because I want to be the man they deserve. And because of you, Sarah. I don't know what really happened 6 years ago, but I want to make it right, even if you never give me the chance. Sarah turned away, silent tears trailing down her face. She didn't answer. But for the first time, she didn't call the children back early. She let Ethan keep reading to Daisy, let Damien drag him into their game, let Daniel proudly show off his robot. And in that golden Seattle sunset, she felt, perhaps, just perhaps, she didn't have to run anymore. Are you still following the story? Please leave your thoughts on the story in the comments below. All your comments are the motivation for us to create better stories. Don't forget to subscribe to Soul Stories. Thank you very much. May 2025. The spring rains in Seattle had finally given way to summer sunlight, casting warm reflections off the glass towers downtown. Inside his office at Blackwell Industries, Ethan Blackwell sat still before his computer screen, his fingers clenched around a stack of documents. In front of him was a printed record from Blackwell Connect, the company's internal messaging app. A single knife-edge line of text stood out in bold. Sarah, we're not right for each other. Don't contact me again. The message had been sent from his account 6 years ago, but Ethan knew. He didn't write it. The truth had come to light earlier that morning, unraveling everything he thought he knew. It all started with an internal investigation. Helen Carter, Eleanor Blackwell's former secretary, had been arrested for embezzling over $1 million from the company's development fund. During questioning, investigators uncovered that Helen had used her high-level access to Blackwell Connect for more than financial fraud. Hidden in the logs was something far more personal. In August 2019, Helen had sent a message to Sarah Monroe from Ethan's account, mimicking his tone to perfection. Alongside that, the logs showed she had blocked every attempt Sarah made to reach Ethan afterward, including one desperate message. Ethan, I need to talk. Please. It was Lena, Ethan's assistant, who first brought the discovery to his desk. Mr. Blackwell, she said, her voice trembling as she handed him the file. We found this in Helen's activity logs. It looks like Mrs. Eleanor ordered her to do it. Ethan read every line, his face draining of color. His mother hadn't just threatened Sarah a few weeks ago. She had orchestrated the very misunderstanding that tore them apart 6 years ago. The fake message. The article announcing his engagement to Sophia Langley. It had all been part of a carefully laid plan to erase Sarah from his life. Ethan thought of Sarah's pained words in his office. You chose to leave me. He had suspected his mother's interference, but he had never imagined it was this cruel. Grabbing the file, he headed straight for Sarah's apartment. She had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt, no matter how little it could change the past. Inside the small apartment, Sarah was gently tying Daisy's hair into pigtails, while Damien and Daniel played with building blocks on the floor. She tried to remain calm, but her thoughts still circled around last week's moment in the park. Ethan confronting his mother to defend her and the kids, the sincerity in his eyes when he said, I want to make this right. She wanted to believe him, but fear still lingered, that trusting him again would only lead to heartbreak. A knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find Ethan standing there, his gray suit wrinkled, eyes shadowed with pain and resolve. Sarah, he said hoarsely, we need to talk. Just 5 minutes, please. She hesitated, glancing at the kids playing nearby, then nodded. She led him to the kitchen, where they could speak in private. What is it? She asked, her arms crossed like a shield. Ethan placed the file on the table and opened it to the page containing the fake message. 6 years ago, you got this from me, he said, pushing the paper toward her, telling you we weren't right for each other, that you shouldn't contact me again. I didn't send that, Sarah. Helen, my mother's secretary, did. She was ordered to, by my mother. Sarah stared at the page, her heart pounding. That message, the one that shattered her, now lay before her, accompanied by proof that it was a lie. She flipped to the next page and saw her own message. Ethan, I need to talk, please. She remembered sending it, remembered how her heart broke when she never heard back. She blocked my messages, she whispered, voice shaking. Ethan nodded, his eyes filled with remorse. I didn't know. I didn't know you tried to reach me, that you came to the office, that you left a note. Helen blocked it all. And my mother, he stopped, rubbing his face. She thought she was protecting me, but she destroyed everything. I searched for you for weeks, Sarah, called around, asked coworkers, but there was nothing. I thought you chose to leave. Sarah turned away, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. She remembered those lonely days in her rented apartment, pregnant with triplets, believing Ethan had chosen a different life. I was pregnant, Ethan, she choked. I was going to tell you, but then the message and the article about Sophia Langley. I thought you didn't want us. Ethan took a step forward, then stopped as she stepped back. I didn't know about the article, he said, voice cracking. That was my mother's doing too, trying to solidify a merger with Langley Tech. I was never engaged, not even close. He exhaled slowly, grief washing over his face. I don't deserve to be their father, Sarah. I wasn't there, but I didn't know. And now that I do, I want to be a better man. For them. For you. I want to make it right, even if I can only fix a fraction of what I've broken. Sarah looked at him, her eyes full of pain, and something else. Hope. She touched the printed message, the one that had haunted her every night for 6 years. It was a lie. All of it. She wanted to hate Ethan, to rage against his mother, to scream at the unfairness of it all. But she was tired of being angry, tired of holding on to pain. More than anything, she wanted her children to be happy, and deep down she knew Ethan wanted that too. They don't know, she said at last, voice soft. They don't know you're their father, and I don't know how to tell them. She glanced toward the living room, where Daisy was giggling at something Damien had built. But if you want to be in their lives, Ethan, you have to earn it, not with words, with time. Ethan nodded, eyes glinting with determination. I will, no matter how long it takes. He didn't reach for her, didn't try to force anything. He simply stood there, waiting. Sarah wiped her tears and took a deep breath. Okay, she said, but this isn't forgiveness. This is a chance for the kids. She turned to look at them, and Ethan followed her gaze. His heart felt heavier than ever, but also lighter, freed by truth at last. The past couldn't be changed, but it could be the foundation for a new beginning. The truth had surfaced, and though it hurt, it was also the first step toward healing. Late May 2025. The first glow of summer was fading in Seattle, giving way to soft lavender skies as twilight settled over the city. Inside Sarah Monroe's modest apartment, the air felt heavy despite the sounds of laughter echoing from the living room. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy sat on the rug-building towers with blocks, but Sarah noticed Damien, her most sensitive child, glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking. Since her conversation with Ethan the week before, when the truth about the forged message was revealed, Sarah had tried to keep life normal, but the turmoil inside her was impossible to mask. She was caught between the pain of the past and the quiet hope Ethan had brought back into her life. And Damien, with the tender perception of a 5-year-old, sensed every ripple of that emotional current. Mommy, are you sad? Damien asked quietly while Sarah was washing dishes in the kitchen. She turned, forcing a small smile as she dried her hands on a dish towel. No, sweetheart. Mommy's just a little tired. But Damien wasn't convinced. He had seen her wiping away tears when she thought no one was looking. He had heard her sigh while staring at their family photo. And he remembered how Mr. Ethan had looked at her in the park, how she had gone silent after whatever he said. Damien didn't understand everything, but he knew Mr. Ethan mattered, and he wanted his mom to smile like she used to. That afternoon, when Sarah took the children to the neighborhood park, Damien quietly slipped away while she was helping Daisy retie her shoelaces. She didn't notice right away. Damien, tiny legs fueled by big determination, hurried toward the tall building he remembered. Blackwell Industries, just a few blocks away. He knew the path. He remembered the office where he had met Mr. Ethan. If I find him, maybe Mommy won't be sad anymore, he whispered, clutching the cloth doll Daisy had handed him. For safety. But Seattle wasn't kind to a 5-year-old alone. As he crossed a busy street, Damien tripped over the curb and fell hard onto the sidewalk. He tried to stand, but a sharp pain shot through his ankle. Tears welled up, and he began to cry. A middle-aged woman nearby rushed to his side, alarmed. She called the police while Damien sobbed, still holding the doll. "I need to find Mr. Ethan," he sniffled. Hearing the name and recognizing Blackwell Industries, the woman contacted the building. Word reached Ethan within minutes. He was in his office reviewing a report when Lena burst in, breathless. "Mr. Blackwell, Damien, he's been found on the street. He fell. The police are taking him to Seattle General Hospital." Ethan's heart stopped. He didn't think. He grabbed his coat and sprinted for his car, mind racing. "Damien, my son. Why would he go looking for me?" He called Sarah. No answer. She was probably already searching for him. At Seattle General, Ethan arrived just as Damien was being wheeled into the ER. The boy lay on the gurney, pale and teary-eyed, still clinging to the cloth doll. A calm-voiced doctor told Ethan that Damien had a dislocated ankle. Painful but not serious. He would need a cast and some rest. Ethan knelt by the bed, grasping the small hand in his. "Damien, it's me. I'm here. You're going to be okay." Damien blinked at him, his blue eyes so much like Ethan's glistening. "I wanted to find you, so Mommy wouldn't be sad," he whispered, before drifting into sleep from exhaustion and pain meds. Ethan's chest tightened. He sat there motionless, hands still clasped with his son's. He thought of Sarah, of how terrified she must be, of the 6 years he'd failed to be there for his children. If this is what being a father means, then I've failed them again and again. Sarah arrived at the hospital an hour later, out of breath, her hair wine-tossed from panic. She had been frantic after realizing Damien was gone, searching the park, calling the police, finally getting a call from the hospital. She'd left Daniel and Daisy with a friend and raced to the ER. When she burst through the doors, she found Ethan seated beside Damien's hospital bed, his hand still holding the boys. Damien lay asleep, his left leg in a fresh white cast, the cloth doll tucked beside him. "Sarah," Ethan said as he rose, his voice raw. "I didn't know he was coming to find me. She didn't let him finish. She rushed to the bed, wrapped her arms around Damien, and kissed his forehead through her tears. "My baby," she whispered. Then she turned to Ethan, her expression a mix of fury and relief. "You were here all night?" she asked, voice trembling. Ethan nodded. "I couldn't leave. He said he wanted to find me so you wouldn't be sad." He paused, emotion tightening his throat. "Sarah, I don't know how to fix everything I've broken, but I won't let them be hurt anymore." Sarah looked at him, and for the first time, she saw more than guilt. She saw a father. She thought of the truth he had brought to her last week, the forged message, the apology that came not with excuses, but with humility. She remembered the way he told stories to Daisy, played soccer with Daniel, and now had stayed beside Damien through the night. She drew a slow breath, voice quiet but steady. "Ethan, you're their father. I can't deny that anymore." The words struck like a blade, cutting but also freeing. Ethan blinked, his tears finally falling. He didn't speak, afraid to ruin the fragile moment. Sarah took the seat beside the bed. Ethan sat next to her. They didn't speak of love. They didn't make promises. They simply sat side by side, watching over their sleeping son. Then, without thinking, Sarah reached out, and Ethan took her hand. His was warm, trembling slightly in hers. In the stillness of that hospital room, under soft, fluorescent lights, they found something unspoken. Not the love they once had, but the love they now shared for their children, and perhaps the beginning of something new. June 2025. The gentle summer sun filtered through the trees in a quiet backyard on the outskirts of Seattle. Sarah Monroe stood by a wooden picnic table, arranging cookies and fruit juice, her gaze drifting toward her 3 children laughing and running on the grass. Damien, his ankle now fully healed, was trying to teach Daniel how to fly a kite, while Daisy sat on a blanket, rocking her cloth doll gently in her lap. Beside her, Ethan Blackwell, dressed not in his usual powerful suit, but in a simple t-shirt and jeans, was tending to a small campfire, preparing marshmallows for roasting. Today marked their first family picnic, a fragile, hopeful step forward after months of turbulence. Just last week, Ethan and Sarah had walked into a law office together to finalize the adoption paperwork. With Sarah's full consent, Ethan had legally become the father of Damien, Daniel, and Daisy. The process was straightforward, but when Sarah signed her name, a wave of relief and fear washed over her. "This is for the children," she'd said, her voice steady but her eyes cautious. Ethan had only nodded, his expression resolute. He knew legal parenthood was more than ink and paper. It was a vow to be there every single day, despite the wreckage of the past. Now, under the lavender hues of a Seattle sunset, Sarah watched as Ethan gently showed Daisy how to skewer a marshmallow on a bamboo stick. His voice was soft, patient. "Easy now, sweetheart. Don't let it fall." Daisy giggled, her cheeks glowing pink. Sarah sank onto the blanket, hugging a pillow to her chest. Her heart felt warm and tangled. She had opened her heart, admitted Ethan was the children's father. But the fear of being hurt again lingered like a shadow. Ethan caught her gaze and walked over, sitting beside her, keeping just enough space to let her breathe. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Sarah nodded but then sighed, her eyes following the children. "I was just thinking about everything," she murmured. 6 years, Ethan. I raised them alone, in a tiny town, working at a craft store just to afford formula, diapers, and Daisy's medicine when she got sick. There were nights I didn't sleep. When Damien had a fever or Daniel cried for a toy I couldn't afford, I did everything I could to make them smile. But sometimes I wondered if I was enough. Ethan listened in silence, his grip tightening on the bamboo stick in his hand. He wanted to say something, anything, but he knew this wasn't a moment for defense. It was a moment to listen, to understand. Sarah's voice softened. "I used to think you abandoned us. That belief made me strong, but it also made me afraid to trust again, afraid to let anyone close." Ethan looked at her, his eyes gentle. "Sarah, I can't change the past. I can't erase the nights you spent alone or the fear you carried. But I'm here now, and I'll do everything I can to make sure you and the kids never have to carry that fear again." Sarah turned to him, her gaze flickering with emotion. "You're not the man I loved back then," she said, her tone honest, not cruel. "You've changed, Ethan. You're no longer that dreamer in a polished office. And I'm not that naive girl who believed love fixed everything." Ethan offered a bittersweet smile, the fading sunlight casting gold on his features. "You're the reason I want to be a better man, Sarah. Not just for the kids, but for you. You gave me a family, a second chance. I can't promise to be perfect, but I promise I won't leave." His words drifted over her like a warm breeze, stirring something deep within. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she leaned gently against his shoulder, a simple gesture, but one that said everything. Ethan didn't move, afraid to shatter the moment. They sat there in silence, shoulder to shoulder, watching their children roast marshmallows. Damien's laughter rang through the yard. Daniel waved his half-burnt marshmallow like a trophy, and Daisy cradled her doll beside the fire. In that quiet embrace beneath the soft sky, Sarah felt something she hadn't known in years. She wasn't alone anymore. Seattle, July 2025. The city basked in golden sunshine, birds chirping softly in the trees. In the backyard of Sarah Monroe's apartment, a simple birthday party was in full swing for Damien, Daniel, and Daisy, now officially 6 years old. A wooden table draped in a sky blue cloth held a chocolate cake. Colorful balloons were tied to the chairs, and a handmade paper garland fluttered gently in the breeze. Ethan stood at the grill, flipping burgers, while Sarah sliced fruit nearby, her gaze drifting lovingly over the children as they ran through the grass with a few of their friends from daycare. It wasn't extravagant, but it overflowed with love. And that, above all, was what Sarah and Ethan wanted their children to feel. Ethan had spent weeks planning not just the party, but something far more important. Since their picnic a month earlier, he had felt a shift in Sarah. The wall between them was no longer stone. It was a door, slightly ajar. She was still guarded, still afraid of the past. But he also knew something else. He couldn't imagine his life without her or without the kids. Today he was going to risk everything. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting the sky in soft shades of lavender and gold, the party reached its final moment. Gift giving. Ethan knelt before the children, presenting each with a small, silver-wrapped box. "These are special gifts," he said, voice deep and warm. Damien opened his first. His eyes widened with joy when he found a small silver ring inside, finely engraved with the letter D. Daniel and Daisy followed, each finding their own tiny ring, their initials delicately carved into the silver bands. "This is a promise from your dad," Ethan said, his voice catching slightly as he looked at them. "I'll always be here, no matter what." The children squealed with delight, slipping the rings onto their tiny fingers and running off to show Sarah. She smiled at their excitement, but as she approached Ethan by the cake table, her gaze held quiet curiosity. "Why rings?" she asked softly. Ethan drew a slow breath and reached into his pocket. "I'm glad you asked." He pulled out a fourth box, this one smaller, velvet, unmistakably different. Then before she could respond, he dropped to one knee. Gasps and tiny cheers rippled through the children as Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. Ethan opened the box to reveal a fourth silver ring, simple, elegant, and glowing softly in the twilight. "Sarah," he began, voice shaking slightly but full of resolve, "I left you alone for far too long. 6 years. I wasn't there when you needed me most. I wasn't there for our kids. But now I know you're everything. Not just the mother of my children, but the person I want beside me every day. If you'll give me the chance, not just to be a father, but to be your husband, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making you and the kids happy." Sarah stood frozen, tears slipping silently down her cheeks, one hand over her mouth. She looked at Ethan, then at the children, watching them with wide, hopeful eyes. She remembered the years of loneliness, the pain, the silence, but she also remembered the past few months. Ethan reading to Daisy, playing soccer with Damien, teaching Daniel about circuits and screens, and sitting all night in a hospital room just to hold their son's hand. He wasn't perfect, but he had changed, and so had she. She reached out her hand, her voice breaking. "Yes, Ethan, I say yes." Cheers erupted from the children and a few neighbors. Ethan stood and slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms. Sarah leaned against his chest, her tears soaking into his shirt, but her smile shone brighter than it had in years. The party ended with the whole family gathered around the birthday cake. Damien, Daniel, and Daisy blew out the candles in unison, their laughter echoing in the warm air. Sarah sat beside Ethan, her fingers laced with his, the silver ring gleaming under the twilight. They looked at the children, then at each other. And in that moment, they both knew. This was home, a real family built not from perfection, but from pain that had healed, love that had endured, and a second chance they had both chosen to take.